All right. Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. We had to change the session to be online because of all the situation that you all know. I'm very happy today to have VC, Laila, and Omar with us. We were very much looking forward to having them in our in-person session, but unfortunately, this is the next best thing these days. Hope that everyone is keeping nice and safe. So I'm not gonna keep you waiting. So I'll probably ask Omar and Layla to quickly introduce us, and then VC will introduce himself and start the talk. And yeah, he's Omar. Do you want to go first?
Sure. My name is Omar Ha-Redeye. I am a lawyer and currently the executive director at the Durham Community Legal Clinic. So we focus primarily on poverty law and people who don't have the money to afford legal services generally. And so a big part of my interest is finding solutions through technology to provide legal services in a more cost-effective manner.
Layla.
Hi, everyone. My name is Laila Paszti. I'm a technology lawyer at Norton Rose. So I help companies build and develop software applications, including machine learning applications. And before I went to law school, I worked as a machine learning engineer at ExxonMobil, where I built some of the first neural networks that were employed by the oil and gas company in Canada. And I see that, the audio is hard to hear, so I will try to speak up. Please let me know if that's better.
All right, sounds good. So we're going to go into the session. So I'm going to ask everybody to, for this part, we're going to spend about 20 minutes to half an hour, where VC will walk us through the concepts. I would ask everyone to mute themselves, please, and turn off your videos to not create distractions. And then we'll have about 20-minute breakout where you can talk to VC himself and Layla and Omar as well. All right, so VC.
Great, thanks so much, Amir, and welcome everyone. My name is Venkat Chandra. I go by VC. I am a COO and a Chief Product Officer with Ketongo, which is a legal tech firm. I primarily focus on what I call as the B2B expert augmentation and automation solutions. Previous to this, I was a director at Ernst & Young with their strategic analytics practice, and I've been in Big Four management consulting for about 15 years. I guess before we get started, hopefully everyone is safe. We wanted to, this is, I think, Amir, I'm sure we deliberated about whether we should have this session or not. However, as difficult times there are, it's very important for us to have business as usual so that we can actually stay sane. So this is in continuation of that business as usual as much as possible so that we can all stay sane. I'm really excited to kind of walk through, something I really am passionate about. Technology and expertise, how they can be brought together to really serve, folks at scale. Without much further ado, I'll quickly walk through the agenda. What we're going to talk about is first the legal services market, so that you have set the context about what this is about, what is the size of the prize, if you will. Where is the legal services market going, and why is there a need for legal tech? Then we talk about what is legal tech, who are the key stakeholders within the legal tech ecosystem. Why should we be using legal tech? What are the benefits from a law firm standpoint, from an in-house lawyer standpoint, as well as from just consumer standpoint? Next, we're going to talk about various use cases. And then we talk about the challenges. We will spend a lot of time on the challenges because as we have talked about, as part of the description of the agenda itself, I mean, we wanted to make sure as applied as possible and as pragmatic as possible. So we wanted to make sure that this is not a theoretical exercise on product management, but this is very pragmatic, practical lessons you can take with you as you chart out your own journeys. And then we will have a breakout followed by a discussion on opportunities and future direction. Amir, anything to add from your perspective?
Oh, all sounds good.
Okay, great. So legal services market is depending on how you calculate it. It can be, globally speaking, it's around 600, 700 billion dollars, and it is growing at a linear pace. What's happening though is that the market, as much as while it is growing, it's growing at a slower pace. Number one. Number two, there is huge competition, particularly in the last couple of few years, driven by big four firms joining the legal services, tech-enabled law firms joining the legal services, and there's a bunch of these legal tech, companies that are actually starting to peck and nibble at some of the corners of the legal services, and kind of threatening to get into the bigger chunks of automating and augmenting chunks of legal services. So there is, as much as the market is growing, the competition has never been fiercer before. And now that with what we are seeing in the market because of the current crisis, this is going to be a big problem too for all the existing incumbents as to how they can keep their share, and how are they actually going to go to the market with the clients who actually, whose wallets have also shrunk, to actually be able to deliver the same quality of services at a cheaper price, if you will, because the wallets have shrunk all of a sudden. So there are pricing pressures. There is a significant, the customer expectations is only increasing. Um, and what it also means is that, again, given the crisis currently, and even some of the factors that have been brewing in the last few years, law firms will be needing to shift from the very high cost in-house bundled and bespoke solutions to lowered cost, more and more online, where applicable, unbundling some of their packages, and offering some kind of technology driven solutions. This is really the only way they can potentially address the market without really, losing a huge share of their, huge revenues, that they currently make. A lot of these big law firms, as well as some of the middle tier firms. What is also happening is even the in-house corporate legal departments, they're also needing to up their games, because from a within an organization standpoint, they're all being expected to play a much more important role within the organizations, as opposed to previously they were considered as a cost center within an organization. Now the in-house legal departments are being asked to play a more strategic role, almost be a pseudo profit center. So that's really the context within which reason why legal tech is becoming more and more important. As the chart shows, there has been a significant increasing trend of investments in the 2018 and all the way into 2018. 2019 has there was a bit of stabilization. 2020, it's going to be interesting essentially how things will play given the crisis. One vantage point is it's going to actually increase. Other vantage point is it might decrease significantly, but it still means that, it still doesn't mean the legal tech demand itself will slow down. Which as we talked about, there is almost no way a big law firm can basically operate at high quality without infusing a bunch of technology at this point of time. So really, that is the key message. We have come to a stage where adoption of these exponential tech is becoming, and now has become, essentially an important and almost a critical business imperative. They have to do it. There are not many options really that exist. So what is legal tech? And if you really look back, traditionally, let's say a few years back, legal tech was more about tech that was used to essentially improve the efficiency in support functions, almost like these, the cost centers, if you will, within a legal firm. That meant accounting, some document storage, maybe discovery, but it was never used in a strategic way. As we think about in the last few years, particularly as exponential technologies became more and more mature, more and more stable, what we're seeing now is these are starting to augment or even replace some of the core functions of attorneys. And we will see a bit more of examples of some of them, in one of the subsequent slides. So the key points here from a legal tech standpoint is there is a paradigm shift in how technology is being integrated into the delivery of legal services. Uh, the next one is this is changing, as I said, both in how the law firms and in-house departments are actually accessing these legal services itself. Um, the other piece is also just to indicate how big this has become. Stanford Law maintains a tech index, basically, where of all the legal tech firms around the world. As of now, it's now 1499, about 1500 companies. Even a couple of years back, the number would have been almost one third or one fourth of this number, right? And this is only increasing exponentially, right? The number has been growing, twice every year almost. So that's really, how important legal tech is becoming within the construct of legal services delivery. Um, the other thing to note is that legal tech is essentially one of the components of what can be more broadly called as expert augmentation and automation. As you can see, there are so many different domains of expert augmentation and automation and augmentation, from accounting, accountant automation to compliance to CRM to marketers, and lawyers is legal tech is one of them. And on this slide, I do want to point out one thing, is that World Economic Forum, in a recent report, "A Future of Jobs," which is about in a year and a half back, they actually went through and identified which are all the job categories that are going to be ascendant, which means the demand will increase, that are relatively going to be stable. In other words, it's not going to change a whole lot, and and professions that will actually become potentially be negatively impacted by technology. Lawyers and accountants happen to be in that category. Just to give a context of how big this could be, and why there is so much of attention from investor community, from essentially techpreneurs itself, around legal tech. So the 7 players, within the ecosystem of legal tech. There are the law firms, which are going to be likely the biggest users of tech, the regulators, the schools and students, and this is an important component we will talk about in the challenges. The associations, the bar associations, the investors, some of the tech firms that may not be legal tech, but they are tech firms that have been building technologies that can be potentially used in a legal tech, in a legal services delivery. And then we have these buyers, like for example, consumers looking to access legal services, and general counsels and the in-house legal departments. So these are the key 7 stakeholders within the legal tech, and that stakeholders the legal tech market is trying to address in one way or the other. What is the benefit of legal tech adoption? There are benefits both for law firms as well as from clients and corporate law departments who buy from some of these law firms. I don't want to go through each of these detail, but I do want to point out one thing which is very important, particularly because of the integration of AI into the mix. Uh, for the law firms, it's about the knowledge transfer. It's way more easier, because there is a lot more patterns to how certain decision making happens within the legal domain. There is increased opportunity from a legal tech from a AI standpoint to more easily, relatively easily, build some of these knowledge transfer options, which may not always have been easy in some of the other domains. Again, I say that loosely. We need to be very clear about which pieces of it, but there is definitely a significant component of that knowledge transfer that actually can potentially be relatively easier to embed within a law firm. The next one is legal tech is enabling many new law firms to use this as a huge competitive advantage for them, because they can be embedded right from the beginning to be tech enabled, so that they can a lot more much easily and faster go to the market with much better quality. That also means that the lawyers that are actually joining some of these newer law firms, they're all trained to understand how to use AI. there is this there's a saying about something about how AI will not replace lawyers, but lawyers who use AI will definitely replace lawyers who do not use AI, right? So that's really what a big advantage is from a law firm standpoint. And the third one is really how, because of these efficiencies that can be generated, there's much more easy to pass on these savings to the consumers, which is perfect. Which also means that there's going to be more business coming to these law firms by actually operating at a lower cost. So those are the key benefits from a law firm standpoint. From obviously from a client standpoint, it means a lot more options. From a service provider standpoint, there's more transparency in fees, which is a really, really big problem. Corporate law departments have and always complain about. It's much more easy to have some amount of self-serve and service fulfillment, if you will, and a much lower service cost from a customer standpoint. So these are the key benefits, if you will, from by using legal tech and adopting legal tech, both from law firms and corporate law department standpoint. So how is this being used within the context of in the market right now? What are all the various products or use cases that are available? And we'll kind of very quickly go through each of those. Broadly speaking, there are about these 8 categories of products that are being used. One, we start from right to left. Doc automation and document management. This would be where legal documents creation and management. You can basically go to some of these sites, for example, LegalZoom. You can basically create some, like privacy, as an example, privacy statement when you're creating a website. You don't necessarily need a lawyer anymore. Although I'm sure Omar and Laila will, will disagree, but they are pretty good in automating most of the work that would have otherwise required a lot of time by a lawyer. So I do know, in fact, there is a Canadian law firm, I work with, that uses some of the doc automation technology, where they're able to offer their prices, charge services at really low price, because they actually use it, and they use it for a collaboration as well with their consumers. So they are able to offer it at such a at a price that would have been almost impossible to assume in any other delivery model. So that would be an example of a doc automation type product. The next one is more practice management product suite. This would be those which enable the running the business of law. That could be the sales, marketing, HR. Some tools designed to basically manage some of the administrative and back office tasks. Third one would be legal research solutions that help lawyers to build a case more easily by providing access. We have a very a great Canadian example of Ross Intelligence, that is essentially a global brand now, that enables legal research. The next one is financing. It's actually interesting because not too long ago there was a huge round of funding for a very for a startup in this domain, where they used AI to fund their plaintiffs. So if you are somebody, if I'm a consumer, I want to file a case, I can provide some of these details within the platform, and if using statistic, it'll find out the probability, and if it feels like it's a good fit, essentially they will fund the entire case, obviously for a commission. So there are emerging platforms in this domain of plaintiff financing and legal financing, if you will. The next one is dispute resolution. This is actually interesting. This is also subject of a recent book by one of the leading luminaries in this domain, Richard Susskind, where AI is starting to play a role in judging online for small claims, freeing public resources. And this is very important because in that book he talks about how the access to legal market, only 46% of global population only access, or can only 46% can actually access legal services. That's a pretty shockingly low number, given so many democracies around the world. The next one are tools and product suites around e-discovery. So these are all tools to enable, for a legal case, collect, review, exchange information in e-format for the purpose of using as evidence. So that would be a class of products helping various aspects of e-discovery. Um, the next one is contracts, analytics and compliance. um, this is really to help gain more insight and more efficiency, and also help with compliance. There is a loose touch, or at least some kind of overlap between this and RegTech, which is a regulatory tech that is starting to emerge. And RegTech is becoming an important vertical within the tech, within the tech ecosystem. The last one is basically the tools and marketplaces that connect lawyers and with clients. There are many variants of such tools and such marketplaces. Some of them are really connecting person A with a case requirement with a lawyer. Some of them are also rating. For example, consumers providing some ratings to the lawyer, and that forms a basis for you to actually make decisions. So there are again many variants of how marketplaces are being set up within the legal tech domain. I'll kind of pause here. I see that there is quite some chat messages here. I mean, are we do we Amir, do we answer that at the end of it, or do we want to take it as we go through this presentation?
Keep them for the breakouts. If they're
Okay.
not addressed, then we can discuss them after.
Perfect. Okay. So this slide, very busy slide, I must say. This summarizes the various types of products kind of available, and I'll point out some things particularly relevant as we go through it. See the litigation funding. There is one which is not here, which is a Legalist, which is the startup I just talked about, that got funding of about 100 million, not too long ago. E-discovery, we have again we have a bunch of tools. There are some actually in Canada too that are pretty good in this domain. Clio, if you have noticed or if you've heard about Clio, this was I believe the second biggest ever Canadian. This got second biggest ever investment, around $200+ million within the last year. This essentially, this is all about practice management. Think about it, something like an ERP for legal firms. And this is this is expected to change, or at least the investment hypothesis was about changing how law firms actually operate. When somebody invests $250 million or $200 million, obviously they see the potential of something like this, and also it also indicates how much needed technology is within the law firms. And if you're familiar with the legal departments, they're not necessarily very tech friendly, and we will talk about that in some of the challenges. The other one I want to refer to is Kira. Kira is an extremely well-known brand, company within a Canadian ecosystem. They pioneered, some of the advancements within the contract analytics. It's an amazing startup story, and that of all the various domains of products, if you will, contract management and contract analytics, I would say, is probably one of the most well-known ones, and also extremely mature, and they're actually growing really well too. E-discovery and contract management, on a relative basis compared to others, they have taken off big time, and they have been getting pretty high valuations from an investors as well. And even when in the last 6 months or so, the legal tech, some of the startups are having some issues. There have been some setbacks. The contract analytics and e-discovery continue to kind of forge forward. And there still are spaces, white spaces, if you will, within these domains that potentially can be leveraged by a new startup, as well. So what are the key challenges as we go through? And as we promised very early on, we're going to focus on, pragmatically, what happens when you try to, build a product, or when if you have built a product, you want to go to market and actually sell to a legal firm, or or in-house in-house legal departments, uh, instead of giving you just it's just a bunch of sent topics about what are the challenges. What we wanted to do was we wanted to actually give you key quotes that actually summarize the key problems, essentially hearing it from the horse's mouth, if you will. And we can talk through what it means and the implications as you kind of plan forward about opportunities and future directions. So the first problem is the hype problem, and this is extremely important. Uh, there is AI is used extremely superfluously in today's world, right? The fact of the matter is everyone uses AI, and I think there is not too bad. And I think in the last 6 months there was some study about who uses actually AI, and the percentage is extremely small about who actually uses AI. Building and embedding AI is extremely difficult, and there is a huge hype around use of AI. Why this is a problem is because oftentimes the hype around AI doesn't live up when it faces the when the rubber hits the road, and the product actually starts getting used. And it's nothing like the magic that has been promised. And what it also means is when that happens, the trust breaks down. So from a product standpoint, it's very important as you kind of think about the strategy around how you're selling it, what you're embedding. It's important to really understand, make sure that we think about how do we find that right fine line between we communicate the value of AI at the same time, not fall into this trap of hyping the capabilities of the platform. The next one is the inertia. It is extremely difficult to sell to legal firms or lawyers. Lawyers are slow to change, and there is a good reason why. And what it also means is that again, this is a business that has been growing. All right, attorneys do make tons of money. For example, I think recently there was a study in UK around how much does some of the top 100 law firms make, and everyone almost on an average they take more than £1 million pounds, right? So this is a pretty a group of people uh, who are really slow to change, because there are also risks. Everything they perceive is through the lens of risk. They're not always tech savvy. In fact, you would a lot of lawyers. It's interesting. Some time back we were doing a some analysis for a law firm, and we prepared this amazing PowerPoint presentation, really nice graphics and all that stuff. And the reaction of the partner was, I don't understand what you're talking about. And he got his somebody from his own department to put all of that PowerPoint presentation into a Word document, and all of a sudden he just got understood what we were trying to say, right? I mean, this is a a group of people who are not really in tech savvy, and they have no need to be tech savvy. So selling a technology into them is a huge disruption into how they actually go about their workflows. And which also means that the adoption, even if there's a euphoria at the very beginning, almost most of the products have a significant drop rate from an adoption standpoint. The knowledge gap is a third one. The challenge is that there is we know a lot of use cases of AI in law non-legal domain. But when it comes to understanding how law firm works, many of the technologists who are trying to startups trying to address this market, they don't necessarily try to understand and spend enough time understanding the nuances of how a law firm works, right? You can build a product for a theoretical firm that doesn't exist, and you can go sell to the theoretical firm and you will never get any sale, because unfortunately there is a reality around how legal sector works and the firms work. So unless the products are designed, the use cases are designed to serve the specific needs of these law firms, and strangely enough there are so many nuances and about how a firm A is so different from firm B around the same thing. So there's a lot of nuance that is needed. This is a trench warfare. It is not easy to just go and just dump a technology and assume that it'll work, and it'll not. Not only it'll not work, most likely they will never want you there. So this is an important lesson learned by many sales teams, particularly, as well as technologists and entrepreneurs who are looking to build into this technology to serve this domain. The fourth one is the whole user experience and value gap. Um, this goes back to the whole promise. Uh, a lot of times, legal terms, teams have been burned using technology, that really have been overpromised and underdelivered. Remember that the words overpromised, underdelivered, these are all perceptional, right? But perception is reality, and it really doesn't matter, whether you actually overpromised or underdelivered. Unfortunately, the bar is very high when it comes to building technology in this market. Which also means that you got to really be careful about how you're doing it. To focus on the UX and how do you deliver real value quickly if you want to expect any and to really make an impact. In other words, there is it's extremely unlikely you will get 6 months, 1 year, 2 years to really get a shot at it. The lawyers are busy, right? A typical lawyer's rate per hour could rate anywhere between 200 to $1,000 depending on the firm, or even more, right? Which means that they when they spend time on learning or working through a technology and trying to get technology to work for them, they value their time through the lens of their rate per hour. So it's important to understand that UX needs to appreciate that fact, particularly in a law firm. The next one is the ethical implications of using AI, and this is something there's more and more discussions of in general about the ethics and AI. This is especially so where, within the legal domain as well. They need to understand a lot of times, because there is not the startups and product managers don't really always explain what's really happening behind the scenes, between the confidentiality and the proprietary nature of what is being built. What the other extreme of giving all the information. There needs to be some balance that needs to be achieved so that there is more comfort around that the ethical boundaries have not been breached by using AI. Because if you want law firms or support teams to start using AI as a key enabler, they need to trust it. And the trust ethics, the ethical boundaries are an important component of law firms, especially so within a law firm. The next one is the tyranny of choice. There's so many products, as we talked about. There are about 1,500 in one of the tech index, for the Stanford code tech index. There are a huge number of legal tech firms. It's the law firms feel deluged around which ones to use, what is the right one. And separating the ones that will work for them is not easy. And even it happened to us recently when we were going and pitching our product, Kitango. This is essentially and exactly the complaint the client had for us. We said, you know what, we like what you say, but here's the problem for us. We have just too many products right now. We just cannot we cannot attempt even to engage in a discussion with you, because we don't even know what to do with what we already have. The next one is a fit for purpose problem. While many are in testing AI and the other solutions, the fact of the matter is many of them have again been built for other industries. We covered this point a little bit briefly in a previous slide, but this is again an important component where from a product manager standpoint, and from a from a startup standpoint, as we're building products into this market, we need to spend some time. The only way it works is if you can find somebody you can co-develop with. or you've been a lawyer, or you have a strong advisory team of lawyers working with you. Without that, finding the right problem to solve, will likely not happen. And even for us, just from a Ketongo standpoint, early on, about 6-7 months back, we had major gaps, because while in fact we did have a pretty strong advisory team, there were areas where we really had to go back to the drawing board, and actually had an extensive discussions with a bunch of lawyers to make sure that there was the fit for purpose was identified. There is also legal training gaps. This goes back to the a typical lawyer is not well trained in using technology, and the root of that is also the way education and law of a law professional is in the law schools. That the it is still 20, they're still generating 26 to 10, the past century lawyers, right? So unless that is changed, and it is starting to change, some of the curriculums are being updated, but unless it is done at a scale and across all law firms, and there's significant more focus in this, it's going to become more and more difficult for some of these lawyers to actually be strong, advocates of using technology and start becoming more comfortable using technology. So this is a major gap, that currently exists. That will take at least 5 years or so. Assuming some of the newer the lawyers, the curriculum have changed, so it will take some time for them to kind of come out of the school, and hopefully they will drive a new era of legal tech growth. The next one is the sales conundrum. um, the the law firms buy very differently from any, if you have not sold into a legal firm, and if your experience has been in many other industries, the approach of how and who to sell and how they buy is extremely difficult and different. The concept of business case, the concept of performance indicators, a lot of times they don't actually have any of these things. So sometimes when you're trying to build a business case saying we can save X hours doing this, Y hours doing that, it hardly resonates because there is no track of all that. So if there is no ignorance, if there is completely ignorant about that, it's like an ignorance is bliss, right? They don't know, and the numbers are not there. So you don't have a reference point to go to them and say, hey, this is your KPI, this is how we can improve, because they don't exist in almost most of the cases. And this is going to always be a big problem, from as you if you're trying to sell to this market. Data security and privacy concerns, we talked about it before. A lot of the SaaS solutions particularly, there is a huge concern around the data breaches and the security of it. So it's very important from a product standpoint to address it. This is absolutely important. I mean, I mean, there was actually anecdotes around how law firms resisted even using emails for a while, because emails were not considered secure, right? It took a while for them to actually start adopting email, and not necessarily because they were against emails. It was just because they felt it was not secure and private enough. So this is an industry that really cares about security and privacy significantly more. So it's extra significantly more important if you're a if you're a SaaS solution provider or an AI product provider, to make for that, and make sure you can actually have a story about why you think your product is secure and has solid strong privacy protection. There's also job security fear. There are lawyers, who absolutely do worry, that AI is going to take, their job. And to some extent, it is true. History tells us that the more that gets automated and augmented, the more work there is that will come their way. But irrespective, there is absolutely fear in a small percentage, but a vocal percentage around how AI can take a percentage of their of their market. And most importantly, and this is a quote I really love the most. This is something Richard Siskind, one of the legal advisors, said. It's really difficult to go tell a room full of millionaires that their business model is wrong, right? They, many of the lawyers make a lot of money. It's very difficult to tell them, hey, what you're doing is wrong. And unless there is a burning platform, like for example where we are today, although it's in an unfortunate circumstance, but the fact of the matter is, unless there is a burning platform, it's very, very difficult for some of these organizations like legal firms to actually change. So in many ways, we are at a time where there's probably a good business case and the right platform where you can actually convince as to why a legal tech product can actually help them stay a millionaire. So I guess I'll kind of pause and probably it's time for breakout. Amir, do you want to take over and guide us through?
Yes. I just want to give a couple of minutes of opportunity for Laila and Omar, maybe to say a few words about what we've heard so far before we get into the breakouts.
Sure, I can jump in there. I actually don't disagree with much of what VC said, except for that, lawyers necessarily are making a lot of money. I think the average is about $80,000 to $120,000 a year in Canada. That's pretty standard in terms of the average across Canada. But it's still, upper middle class, and I think you're right that they're very busy in making that money, and so there's less of an opportunity or perhaps an incentive to learn technology and learn tools. And I think your point is 100% on point in terms of the firms in the aggregate are still largely profitable. And so there is not enough of a motivation for them to necessarily make big moves in terms of adopting technology. That being said, and I'm sure Laila will support me on this, and I'll let her speak to it in greater detail, there is enough pressure that we're actually seeing some adoption within larger firms. I think it's going to be simply a matter of escalating and more pressure before there's going to be greater uptake there.
Thank you, Omar. So I have to say that in my experience, most of the, there are a fair number of lawyers who do use technology to streamline and make themselves more efficient. And then,
Laila, could you speak up a bit, please?
Sure. So I was saying that in regards to Omar's comment that law firms are starting to adopt this technology, that has been corroborated in my view. I see a number of clients coming to the firm and asking for more efficient delivery of services, especially larger enterprise clients. They want more efficient ways, faster turnarounds. And one way that law firms can deliver those kind of savings and efficiency is through using technology. So whether it's using technologies for contract review, providing tools to clients to give them a sense of what their risk strategy is or what their risk profile is by looking at their contracts. That's one thing that we've seen. I know, for example, our firm has a chatbot that we developed that helps clients answer questions about privacy-related issues. So there are specific niches where I think there's definitely room for improvement, and where AI or machine learning tools can really solve an issue. But then, on the flip side, I think where there's more complex issues or newer regulation and newer technologies, it's probably a little harder to look to AI or these types of tools to provide those kind of benefits.